What we have here is the boot camp videos. What that is, it's a series of 5 throwing exercises. They're meant to be done repetitively and sequentially. The whole concept is that each of these exercises develops specific throwing skills and develops them in an order that is appropriate for learning to throw. You're supposed to work on one exercise until you can do it successfully on demand, and at that point you're ready to move on to the next one. The first exercise, which is on this video, you'll see isn't even making a finished pot. It's like the first third to half of a pot. And if that doesn't appeal to you, all I can say is that if you're serious about learning to throw, your time is better spent trying to do that exercise until you can do it successfully, because if you can't do what's outlined in that exercise, I would say maybe 95% of what you get out of trying to proceed from there to make a pot is wasted time. It's time that would be better spent working on getting this fundamental first part of a pot worked out. Now, when I started working on these videos, basically all I've done is film the demos that I would do for a class. And I have done this the way I ordinarily would in class, casually, not making anything to keep, just trying to show you how it's done. If I make a little mistake in class, it's normal for me to kind of look at that as a plus, because things that to a beginner are like, oh no, this is happening to my pot, everything is lost. No, if you're doing a responsible job and building a good strong wall, things like that are easily dealt with, almost inconsequential, and I think it's good for students to see that. There is a lot of additional explanatory material that was originally recorded with these videos, and it wasn't until I thought I was done and went to upload these to YouTube that I discovered that, oh gosh, there are actually time constraints. And time constraints have never been a strong suit for me. At any rate, the videos, they are what they are. They're adequate for their needs. There's little problems here and there. The second video, the second exercise, which is making a good cylinder, I find that I had the camera angle or zoomed in to the point where by the time I'm done I've actually cut off the very top of the pot in the filming. But that's inconsequential. I don't see the point in redoing it. The demonstration of what you are trying to learn is still perfectly obvious. Some of the videos I have simply cut out the centering because, you know, how many times do you need to see me center a ball of clay? I haven't cut out the opening in any of them because that's something that is different from what most people are doing. I think it's fairly obvious what's happening. There'd have to be considerably more explanation and different camera angles, and even more than that, to really make it instructive, or to give you enough information to work with. But I still think it's obvious what's happening to the clay. Let's see, the fifth video, which is a challenging pot, a pot a lot of working potters couldn't make. I ran out of memory space on the camera before I finished collaring the top. Well, what you're missing is no different than the end of the third video, which is about collar. On the fifth video also I could say that you know, when I cut it in half, what I was really wanting to emphasize in throwing it is to show you how thin and still strong you can make the wall on a pot of that shape. And the cross-section of the collaring above is you know, hardly up to what I would consider to be highly desirable. Again, with these demos, I do them the way I do demos. I'm not making anything to keep. It doesn't have to be perfect. They are for instructional value. At any rate, about the only other thing I'll say is there was a lot of useful information on the footage that I am simply abandoning because of time constraints. And when I get around to it, I will go through that and try to put together an additional video that includes the most relevant information. But that would just be me explaining stuff. It wouldn't involve throwing. I think that's all I have to say. Alright, this is the first exercise. What I have here is 2 3/4 pounds of clay. And that's what I'll be using for all the demos except for one. In this first exercise I'm going to show you the way I've been teaching people to center. I've had a lot of luck with this. After this one, I'll just center the clay. After that, I will proceed to open the clay and bring it to the point where you want to be at the end of the first exercise. This will go a lot faster for me than it will for you. And the one thing I want to say is, it's not critical that you do it exactly the same way I do. But the critical point is to end up with the same thing. Now, this is the way I've been teaching centering. I'm doing this by separating the two hands. Now, I'm speaking for a right-hander. If you're a lefty and you have the clay going the other direction, just turn it around. Now what I'm doing here, what I'm trying to teach people with the left hand, to get the sense of catching the force of the incoming clay as it comes into your hand and pushing against that. You'll see if I let go of this that I'm leaning it over. When you do this, you can really feel the things in the clay that you're trying to center out of it. For students, what I'll do is I'll actually guide their hand, and I'll take charge of keeping the clay nice and slippery wet, just what it needs to be for centering. Then at some point I'll give the sponge to that person in their right hand and say, alright, now keep doing the same thing with your left hand, and just use your right hand to push on the clay and do the same thing. And when you're done, you slowly ease up. This is about the shape you would want at that point. I'm going to modify the shape a little bit for opening. Now the opening that I do, I've had a lot of people learn it and a lot of people who didn't. This is how it goes. The way you're enclosing and squeezing the wall while you're doing this helps work out any stuff that you didn't get centered out of it. Now your second pull, you want to squeeze as much as you can down on the bottom and just keep going up. Anybody that's done any throwing at all knows that you have to ease up on the squeeze as you get towards the top. At this point, this is the end of the first exercise. Whoops. Trying to sponge the water out of the bottom simply because obviously I'm not going to keep this, but it'll simplify the clay reprocessing. Now this is what I've always referred to as the 3 Mile Island cooling tower shape. I was doing that in class for a while before I realized, because I thought this was something that every person knew what I was talking about. I'll cut this in half. And then I realized there was an age issue. People of a certain age know exactly what I'm talking about. This is what you want it to look like when you get to the end of the first exercise. It doesn't matter if you do it exactly the way I do it. It doesn't matter if it takes you more pulls. This is the blank from which you're going to proceed to throw a pot. Any pot you make, if you're doing it right, if you're paying attention to the structural considerations in making any shape, is going to start out like this or with some variation on this shape. And you'll see that demonstrated as we proceed through the exercises.